Welcome back to the deep dive. This week, well, we're navigating a really dense field of global information. Everything from tactical shifts on the Eastern Front to some significant diplomatic freezes and even nuclear posturing.
hmm
In a world full of noise, our job, as always, is to distill the facts, give you clear, synthesized intelligence, presenting the different angles, without fear or favor.
Absolutely. And our analysts, they've processed hundreds of sources this past week. Traditional news, military reports, sure, but also a high volume of social media data,
Okay.
all to generate this focused brief.
The goal?
The goal is really to give you a cohesive picture. What are the movements, the decisions, the geopolitical shifts that genuinely matter right now?
And we achieve that clarity thanks to the capabilities of ProWave AI. This deep dive is generated by Stylo News. That's the AI-powered news application designed for exactly this. Comprehensive, multi-dimensional information, cuts through the clutter, delivers intelligence straight to you.
Right.
Okay, let's get straight into it. The most immediate reality: the intensification on the Eastern Front. Our sources are confirming a grim pattern. Slow maybe, but steady Russian territorial gains in the Donetsk region.
Yes, the official reporting points to, I believe, 461 square kilometers captured in October alone.
In just 1 month.
Right. Now, that pace, it isn't exactly a blitzkrieg, but it does point towards a clear, grinding, attritional strategy. And the heaviest pressure seems to be focused around the city of Pokrovsk. It's strategically vital.
And what's striking here, and frankly deeply concerning for Kyiv, is how this steady Russian movement highlights a major strategic weakness for Ukraine.
You mean the manpower shortage?
Exactly, the critical manpower shortage. Reports from near Pokrovsk suggest Ukrainian forces are outnumbered, possibly significantly.
The figure we're seeing mentioned is up to 8-1 against the Russians in that specific area.
8-1. Wait, that's an immense disadvantage. How can Kyiv possibly hold the line under that kind of pressure, especially with winter coming on?
Well, they're relying heavily on tactical efficiency, well-prepared defenses, and crucially, striking key Russian assets and infrastructure where they can.
Making the most of what they have.
Precisely. But that pressure, that ratio, it remains fundamentally unsustainable over the long haul, which leads us directly to the infrastructure war aspect.
Ah, yes, the targeting of energy facilities.
Exactly. Russia is quite openly pursuing a strategy aimed at, well, making parts of industrial eastern Ukraine essentially unlivable through the winter months. We're seeing targeted energy nodes in Sumy, Chernihiv, Kharkiv.
And it's not just the east, is it? We saw reports this week about damage further west.
That's correct. Damage confirmed at the Dobroforskaya thermal power station. And that's way out in the Lviv Oblast. So the reach is significant.
Yet, even facing this, we are seeing some remarkably efficient Ukrainian countermoves. Designed, I suppose, to offset that manpower gap.
Yes, absolutely. The strike on the Belgorod Reservoir Dam is a standout example. Really targeted capability.
Believed to be U.S.-supplied HIMARS.
That's the assessment, yes. And that single action caused significant flooding. The aim was clearly to disrupt Russian military logistics flowing towards the front.
And did it work? What was the impact?
Operationally, quite massive, according to reports. The tempo of Russian assaults near Vovchansk, for instance, reportedly dropped from around 20 attacks per day down to about 5.
Wow, a 75% reduction from one strike.
It demonstrates effective application of long-range precision, hitting where it hurts their logistics.
And the drone warfare continues to escalate too, right?
Definitely. We saw Ukrainian drones successfully hit the Tuapse Black Sea port. Reports indicate damage to an oil tanker and the terminal itself.
But there was an intelligence aspect to this as well, wasn't there? Something about an Orion drone.
Yes, this is quite interesting. Ukraine's military intelligence, the HUR, they released what they claim is a detailed 3D map of Russia's advanced Orion combat drone.
Okay.
But here's the critical part. They also claim to have identified 43 specific supplier companies involved in its production chain, foreign companies potentially.
Ah, I see. So that's not just about revealing technical details.
Not at all. If that list is accurate, it's basically an immediate targetable list for sanctions enforcement. It gives Western governments specific names to go after, potentially disrupting that military supply chain abroad.
Turning an operational loss for Russia into an intelligence win for Ukraine and its allies.
Potentially, yes.
Right.
It directly aids efforts to choke off the supply of components.
Right. Now, speaking of escalation, let's shift focus slightly. Away from the immediate battlefield to the broader strategic confrontation, Russia's been testing advanced nuclear-capable weapons again.
That's correct. Signaling a heightened state of readiness, or perhaps just trying to project strength, we saw confirmed tests of the Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile.
The one with potentially unlimited range.
Theoretically, yes, and also the Poseidon underwater nuclear drone. That's that huge autonomous nuclear torpedo designed to target coastal areas. These aren't subtle tests. They're clear demonstrations of strategic intent.
And this intent seems to include, well, outright treaty violations now. Sources are confirming Russian forces have used the Novator 9M729 missile quite frequently.
Yes, on 23 recent occasions, according to the intelligence brief. And this is significant. The Novator 9M729, that's the ground-launched cruise missile whose range capabilities led the U.S. to withdraw from the INF Treaty back in 2019.
The Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Exactly. So its confirmed use now really underscores Russia's willingness to disregard established arms control agreements, which, of course, heightens the perceived threat to NATO's eastern flank.
And this volatility, this uncertainty, it seems to be driving a kind of consolidation of alliances on the other side. We've tracked deepening ties, diplomatic, military between North Korea, Russia, and Belarus.
Highlighted recently by that visit from North Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui.
So how is NATO responding to all this?
Assertively. We're seeing shifts both rhetorically and materially. For example, former NATO Commander General Philip Breedlove publicly called for a fundamental shift, not just deterrence, but active defense readiness.
That sounds like a philosophical change. Preparing for actual conflict, not just preventing it.
It implies a higher state of preparedness, yes. And it's being backed up with real planning and investment. NATO has developed this incredibly detailed 4,400-page defense plan, focused entirely on that eastern flank.
4,400 pages, that's comprehensive.
It's an enormous logistical undertaking. And critically, European defense production is finally starting to ramp up significantly to meet the needs outlined in plans like these.
Any specific examples?
Well, Germany's Rheinmetall investing over 500 million euros to build a completely new gunpowder plant. In Romania, interestingly.
Gunpowder, addressing that critical artillery shell shortage we keep hearing about.
Exactly. It's a direct, tangible response to a very real capability gap across the alliance.
Okay, let's pivot now to what we call the geopolitical ledger. Focusing on the decision makers, the money, the diplomacy. Western pressure, sanctions-wise, seems fairly coordinated still.
It does. The U.S. administration, under President Trump, imposed new sanctions on Russian oil giants, Rosneft and Lukoil. This aligns pretty closely with the EU's 19th sanctions package.
Aimed at hitting Russia's long-term energy income.
That's the goal. Not just punitive, but designed to impact their revenue stream over time. However, on the diplomatic front, things look pretty frozen.
The planned summit.
Correct. The U.S. canceled that planned Trump-Putin meeting in Budapest. Why? Because Russia apparently insisted on non-negotiable demands. Territorial concessions from Ukraine, military reductions, basically terms Kiev couldn't accept.
So a complete diplomatic deadlock, for now, suggests immediate peace talks are unlikely.
That seems to be the situation, yes. The Kremlin took a very hard line.
Despite that cancellation, though, the question of further military aid, particularly long-range systems, seems still open.
President Trump made comments.
He did. He commented that while no decision has been made currently, the possibility of providing long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, quote, remains possible. So, holding that potential escalation in reserve, perhaps, if the diplomatic stalemate continues.
That appears to be the implication, keeping options open. But we also need to look at the potential fractures within the Western alliances, particularly around finances and troop posture.
Troop posture? What's happening there?
Well, the U.S. administration has plans for, admittedly marginal, troop reductions in places like Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Slovakia, scheduled for early 2026.
Marginal reductions, but still controversial.
Very. It's already prompted sharp bipartisan criticism back in the U.S. Congress.
Why the strong reaction to small cuts?
The fear is about the signal it sends. Critics argue that even marginal drawdowns in that forward presence could undermine deterrence, could send the wrong message to Moscow precisely when tensions are high. It raises questions about the long-term U.S. commitment.
Okay, I see the concern. And financially, the frozen Russian assets issue is still causing friction.
Deep friction, yes. Within the EU specifically. Belgium's Prime Minister, Bart de Wever, is actively pushing back against EU plans to, well, essentially appropriate those frozen assets to fund Ukraine.
Why the resistance?
He's citing fundamental financial risks, worries about legal challenges down the line, potential damage to the euro's reputation as a reserve currency if private assets are seized outright like that, It's a complex legal and financial question.
Meanwhile, Ukraine's financial need is immense.
Truly acute. Estimates put it at around $389 billion needed through 2029 just for defense and reconstruction. Now, aid is still flowing. NATO's TRL initiative, for example, plans $60 billion for 2026 alone.
But internal politics can complicate things.
Absolutely. We saw that very publicly recently with the clash between Hungary's Viktor Orban and Poland's Donald Tusk.
Right. Orban advocating for peace, sovereignty, calling Tusk a war hawk.
And Tusk firing back, condemning Hungary's stance towards Moscow and its domestic political direction. It highlights those deep ideological divides within the EU over the war's strategic direction and funding.
That internal EU tension is definitely something for listeners to keep an eye on. Okay, let's talk about the sources feeding into all this intelligence. It's clear we're operating in a very polarized information space.
Absolutely clear. The data shows a stark divergence in reporting bias, depending on the origin.
For example,
We look at Ukrainian sources, Focus.ua, Kiev Post, ZN.ua. They consistently focus on resilience, on successful defense, on exposing alleged Russian failings or atrocities.
and on the Russian side.
Russian state media outlets like RIA Novosti, Izvestia, they heavily emphasize validating their military progress, framing the conflict as a strategic necessity, and pushing back against NATO narratives. Then you have independent sources like the Moscow Times, often reporting critically on Russian policies from within or nearby. It's a complex, multi-layered picture.
And does social media reflect this polarization? Our analysis of platforms like X?
It mirrors it almost perfectly. Discussions are highly polarized, often trapped in echo chambers. Pro-Ukraine hashtags, #Ukraine, #UNOTO tend to draw positive, defiant commentary from Western users. Lots of talk about heroism, the need for aid.
And the pro-Russia side?
Pro-Russia hashtags, #Russia. Hashtag attack, you see supportive, defensive tones, often from Russian-aligned users or accounts. Narratives focus on national security, resisting Western encroachment. The underlying bias of the news sources gets amplified significantly online.
So, filtering through all that, what does this accumulation of facts, reports, and sentiments suggest we should be watching for in the immediate future? What are the key developments?
Okay, 3 or 4 main things to track. First, expect continued high-intensity fighting, particularly around Pokrovsk. That Russian offensive pressure and the Ukrainian defense against it, especially given the manpower issues, remains critical.
Second,
Upcoming NATO decisions, watch for announcements on financial aid packages, enforcement of sanctions, especially those targeting supply chains, and any further adjustments to their deterrence posture based on that new defense plan.
and third, you mentioned U.S. troops.
Yes, keep a close eye on those planned U.S. troop adjustments in Eastern Europe in early 2026. Any changes, up or down, even marginal ones, will be heavily scrutinized for political signaling, both in Moscow and within NATO.
And finally, any potential diplomatic movement.
Well, perhaps. Watch for the possibility of a high-level meeting, maybe involving Presidents Trump, Putin, and Zelensky. The G20 summit in Johannesburg is coming up November 21st and 22nd.
After the Budapest cancellation, is that realistic?
The previous attempt failed, yes, but a large multilateral setting like the G20 sometimes offers a different dynamic, a fresh opportunity for dialogue, perhaps, or maybe just further confirmation of the deep divisions. It's certainly high stakes if it happens.
Okay, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today, a complex picture, and we want to remind you just how we synthesize this level of detail. This deep dive is generated by Stylo News. It's an AI-powered news application.
And it's really more than just a standard news feed. Stylo News is an application, runs on your phone or computer that you can actually download and customize. You tell it what you're interested in.
And it builds personal intelligence-style briefs for you.
Exactly. Pulling from hundreds of traditional news sources, but also integrating data from social media platforms like X. It's built specifically to give you that real-time, multi-dimensional insight. Helps you cut through the noise and stay properly informed without being overwhelmed.
The smart way to stay informed in a complex world. So for that real-time, multidimensional news tailored to you, we really encourage you to subscribe to Stylo News.
You can get your own customized AI-powered brief. Just visit www.stylonews.com. That's STYLO news.com.
All right, changing gears slightly as we wrap up, thank you truly for joining us for this deep dive.
We appreciate you tuning in.
And we genuinely welcome your input. If there are specific topics you'd like us to tackle in future deep dives, please let us know. And of course, you can follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms.
Stay informed, stay safe.
Until next time.